Hello, welcome back to the Beyond the Coach podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kelsey Nanini,
And I'm Chris Sweet.
and we're looking a bit rough this morning. So if you're watching the YouTube, you should definitely just turn this off and go to Spotify. I don't know, this is like a girl problem, but when I curl my hair, I can't like do anything else with it. And day one of shower day, curled my hair,
Mm.
and now I have to wear a hat because there's nothing else my hair will do. So we're just starting off Wednesday wonderfully, but that's life.
If having your hair curled was the biggest problem, I would say you're doing pretty good.
Good point.
Go Ducks.
Good point. Go Ducks. This podcast is sponsored by the Oregon Ducks. Oh my God, that'd be so sick. But no, today we're gonna chit chat about training periodization, which we realized in the like almost 20 episodes that we have recorded. This actually might be the 20th.
Whoa.
It might be. That's crazy.
We can yap.
We can yap. We haven't done this though. We've talked a lot about nutrition. We talked a lot about like mindset stuff and coaching strategies and all the things, but we haven't talked about training.
Mm-mm.
So, I'm excited to chit chat a little more today because I know if you're a coach listening to this, periodization can sound like a very scary word. I know for me, for years, I was like, don't you just like write a workout and like,
Call it a day.
yeah, you're good, right? Like that's fine. And no, like periodization matters. If you're preaching progressive overload, which is like kind of two concepts together technically, but we won't get into that. If you're preaching that, that's what you have to do, then you need to also implement in training like periodization and having that in place. So, let's just dive right in. I have a few notes. So I just want to make sure that we cover everything or cover some of these things because there's so many things that can be covered in the realm of training periodization. So we'll try to keep it pretty not basic, but not go super deep into one topic and just kind of like overview as a whole what periodization looks like.
Yeah, and I think to kick it off, there may be some people who are like, what the hell is periodization? Like, what
Yes.
even is this? Because it can be, it's so funny because I think it's a bigger word than it needs to be in it. But at the
Yes.
same time, it's literally what the word is. Like, it's
Mhm.
very much it. So, it's a strategic approach to training where you are implementing like different or manipulating different specific aspects of the program. And that could be the intensity, the volume, exercise selection. There's so many different things within that can then be varied over time so that you can have training adaptations that work in your favor, prevent overtraining, obviously have peak performance, and do things safely. I think that was the biggest thing that I was missing in my journey before I even knew what periodization was like, I just was training and training and training and training and training. And one, either never changing my weight reps and sets ever. It was like 10 to 12 reps for 20 pounds for years straight.
Yeah.
Or it was, okay, I'm just increasing weight every single workout now until I'm burning out my body and not really feeling the best. So that's what periodization is for anybody who is listening and they're like, I don't know what it is. I promise we've all had to look up the definition at one point. So
Yes, exactly, for sure. And like you said, it's a big word, but it gets overcomplicated. So I think one of the biggest things to remember training periodization is keeping it simple. When you're looking at a progression in a program or maybe even a regression, pick one and stick to it. Like you don't have to have this elaborate program where every 4 to 6 weeks you're increasing volume, you're increasing load, like you're doing both sets and reps of an increase. You're also training them to implement in tempo for every single exercise and like the entire program changes, right? It's like small changes over time. When you're going from, so typically with training program length, I know a lot of coaches will do 4-week training programs, and if you're a coach listening doing 4-week training programs, I want to urge you to change this because one, it's your client isn't going to be getting used to the stimulus in the first week. Yes, they can train someone in the proper intensities, and maybe you purposefully have lower RPE in the first week so they can get used to new movement patterns and used to a new volume or new focus or whatever it may be. But we actually switched to primarily 5 weeks, but at times it'll change for a client if they're in, prep for a certain competition or something of that nature. Even like a strength phase where we're really focusing on progressing strength over, we want to be over a longer period of time. We could go with 6 to even 8 weeks of the same program. But 5 weeks has tended to be like a sweet spot for one specific training block. I know there's some people out there that will literally keep workouts the same for like 8 to even 12 weeks and maybe just varying volume. For an advanced trainee, that's probably something you could do. I, for one, would probably get bored, frankly. Like, and I get that training is supposed to be boring. Coming from an advanced trainee, though, I think I would lose my mind if I was doing the same exact exercises for 12 weeks straight. I don't know about you, Chris.
No, I agree. And I was even thinking of like, I always use the term, especially with clients, when they get very much into like, what is the best for me? What's the best thing? And I'm like, at the end of the day, the best workout plan is going to be the one that you can most consistently stick to. And that's not only from like like these movements are, I don't have pain with them and, they feel good. It's also like, your interest in those movements and your excitement towards getting to the gym. If I'm on a program that is 10 to 12 weeks, by week 8, I am likely wanting to change something up. And I'm likely then getting into the headspace of, oh, well, I'm going to take, this RDL and make this variation of it today. And I'm going to take this squat and do that. Now I'm kind of throwing periodization out the window because now I'm just moving in random movements because I'm just getting bored with it. And again, that's coming from an advanced lifter who, there's definitely training blocks where I'm like, gosh, I love all these movements. This is going so well. But I also want to progress my own, strength where I see a benefit and obviously changing things up for both my interest and then what I have found my body to thrive off of. So I always find like 6 to 8 weeks is like the sweet spot. I think anything after 8, you're probably losing me at that point.
Yes, 100%. And I think too, it's just important to keep your clientele in mind. If you have a beginner trainee or even so in Beyond the Cert, our certification, we break up clients into 3 stages. So we have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Stage 1 are beginners. Stage 2 is like your people that aren't necessarily a beginner. They're not unfamiliar to the fitness space. They've worked out for years. They've done probably a lot of diets and have just been inconsistent in their journey. So they just have a lot of mental roadblocks to work through within their health, their relationship with health and fitness, and nutrition. And then stage 3 is advanced. So the reason I say that is because with stage 2 and stage 1, a lot of those clients, I've heard this so many times, oh, I just get really bored doing the same workouts over and over and over again. And that's something you're going to hear if you are working with those types of clients. And I think it's something to really keep in mind with training periodization, because at some point, one, it's really unreasonable to think about creating new workouts for a client every single week. Like that is not reasonable. But I think just educating them on why things are staying the same and even asking the question of like, hey, like I know you get bored with workouts, but like what kind of results have you seen in the past by switching things up all the time? Because at some point, yes, your body needs variation, but it needs variation long term. So you're going to see a lot better results when you're sticking to the same stimulus for what research has shown 4 to typically like 8 weeks ish by just changing some sort of stimulus in that, whether it be slowing tempo. Primarily, I would say like in a specific training phase, you're really only in like specific training block, you're probably only going to change like reps, maybe add a set in, or take away one depending on what the focus is, and or load. And so giving your client the ability to do so is important. And if you're constantly changing the exercises, there's no real way to be able to kind of manipulate that. So I think just really going through with your client of like, hey, I totally hear you. It can be super boring, but I want you to think of this as like almost competing with yourself. And I think that's the funnest part is when you actually
Yeah.
they're probably getting bored because they're not taking notes. They're not keeping track of how many reps they did last week, what the weight was. Because for me, and I know a lot of people who do stick to the same training program, like you get kind of a sense of excitement when you're like, okay, last week I did 3x8 at 20 pounds. Like this week I'm going to do 3x8 at 22 and a half, or this week I'm going to do 3x10 at 20 pounds, and kind of just continuing to try to beat what you did the previous week. And that's not to say that every week will be that way. There is an element of like, it's okay if you don't improve every single week, because at some point there is a ceiling that you reach.
Yeah.
So being patient with yourself in that sense too.
Yeah. I also think for the people who have chronically changed things up every single week, they also come from a sense of lack of understanding across like intensity that their workout should be. So when they get into, like, let's say they come from, you know, a group training background and they're like, hey, I've only ever done group classes. Group classes change faster than the seasons. Like they are just like, it is new movements, new this, new intensity. It's pushing yourself. It's an RPE of a 10, like get yourself dying, sweating, all this stuff in a single class. I've been there. But it creates a little bit of a, I would say, inaccurate perception of what weightlifting is meant to be. People think, oh, weightlifting, right? It's boring. It's this, it's this. Like I'm going into the gym, I'm on my own. I don't have someone screaming in my ear. But the reality is, if you understand how the intensity of a workout and periodization works together, and that you can actually have a very difficult workout because you're appropriately pushing yourself. And people just have this like negative connotation with it, where I don't know if it's mentally, some people think, I'm just not going to push myself. It's not worth it. I'm not going to break a sweat. Or some people also just have fear of like lifting more, whether that be because quote unquote, they're going to get bulky, quote unquote, their body is going to change in a way and they're going to look like a man, whatever it may be that they're saying. Or if it's fear of, I've just never lifted before, I don't know how to lift weight. But there's so much fundamental stuff, both from a mindset perspective and also just like training basics of someone's body and getting them really geared up, where you can help someone fall in love with training. And I've seen that with a lot of my clients, because I've definitely had plenty of people come to me and say, this is boring and this is boring and I don't like this. And as the coach, it's important to always lead with education, but then also this is where form videos come in mind like a ton. If a client can send me a form video and I see that they are just like sitting there, bicep curls, like just repping them out, and then they're like, okay, I'm bored, I didn't, whatever, I'm going to be like, okay, well, go increase by 5 pounds. 5 pounds on a bicep curl, you're going to be feeling that. So like go pick up 5 pounds and let me know how that feels. Yeah. Slow it down, add in eccentric, do an isometric pause at the top, like do something to help intensify. And like, the clients are going to start to get humbled in that mix. But I think it comes from just all these backgrounds that clients come from, that I hear it from coaches all the time. Well, like, how am I supposed to sell this to my clients? Like, how am I supposed to sell that they're going to be on a workout plan for 5 to 6 weeks at a time? Workouts aren't going to change. They're just going to be on it. You have to be convicted in that yourself as a coach. Like, you have to 100% be convicted. It's not, oh, how do I sell it? It's how can you just preach it more? Like, how can you talk about it more and actually make something that's not sexy because you just love it so much? Like, passion speaks volumes. So if you are someone listening and you're wondering, how the heck do I do that? You just really have to start speaking on it. Not once, not twice, not 10 times, but like literally 1,000 times to start making an impact on your clientele and potential clients coming in.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you say that, because I actually dealt with the opposite thing at Orange Theory. When I was an Orange Theory coach for 3 years, and I had to also I started training coaches in Orange Theory, and I had to teach the coaches how to promote that the workout is different every time. And a lot of the coaches coming in were maybe even members who became coaches, so they were totally bought into that. But me talking to a prospective client who's taking a prospective member who's taking their first class, I'm like, so great, the workout changes every time, it'll never be the same. And I'm like, I have to say this. So I am very convicted in the 4 to 6 weeks, and now it's 5 to 6 weeks. Because I used to have to preach that. Super fun.
What a wild ride.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I can't believe that was 4 years ago. What a time in my life. But yeah, when we're thinking about training, there's a few principles I actually wanted to dive into with a little bit of structure, because like I mentioned earlier, Progressive overload is thrown around so much. And while, yes, I do believe progression and overload are really important training principles, there's also actually 5 more training principles that are super important to keep in mind. And progressive overload, like I said, is like 2 separate things. So when we're thinking about those 2 things, the first one is progression. So you want to be basically gradually progress a movement over time. Now, when we're thinking about that from a periodization standpoint, the first thing to remember is this is like to be able to like continually grow long term. Progression can also mean needing to take a step back and regress like an overload or an overload, a deload.
We're overloading the deload.
You're overloading the deload. So if you're not programming in deloads for your clients, if your client's training pretty hard, like I know when I was training for powerlifting, my coach would actually, she actually called it a reload, which was like mentally feels better because when the word D is just, it has like a D, like a, I don't know, like a slow down connotation,
Yeah.
which makes sense. But reload, it's like, that makes so much more sense. I'm like reloading up so that I can continue long term. And so when you're thinking about progression, that both of those things need to come into play, which is another training principle I'll go over. But progression, when you want to think about this, it's like minimum effective dose. So I know so many people who think they have to go to failure on every single set. Frankly, you're going to burn out. It is not realistic to do that all the time. Now, is there a time and place? Absolutely. When you're, at the peak of your training phase, maybe it's like you're in a training block that's the end of this macro cycle and you're like, doing a lot of burnout sets. And I know I used to do this in the beginning of my journey in like 2016, 2017, I was all about burnout sets, like finishers and
Always.
always going to
I was
failure.
like, how can I torture myself
Right.
after I've already
Yes.
tortured myself?
Priority. Let's go to failure on hip thrusts and then we're going to do pulse squats with a band to failure.
Oh, I wish I could pull some video footage from like my gym when I was back doing that stuff. Probably some comical videos of me on the turf somewhere just doing literally that.
Just dying for no reason. I love actually going back and just like shitting on myself for my old ins. Like all the videos are still there, so I've like saved a ton over time, which is so great to look back on.
Yep.
It's actually like I think I didn't post some of the cringier stuff that I did, which is probably for the best. But minimum effective dose, so important. And that's where like RPE 6 and 7, while they seem super low, they aren't a bad thing, especially starting out a training block. Let's say you're doing a 16-week hypertrophy phase. That first like 4 weeks, you should be at RP 6 or 7 because RPE can gradually increase. That can be part of your progression through the phase. It's not just overall volume because at some point with volume, load, again, you reach that ceiling. And so properly doing RPE 6, but with tempo. For instance, like an RPE, or like a 3 by, let's say you're doing 3 by 10 of something. 3 by 10 with no tempo focus is far different from 3 by 10 with a 3-1-1-1 tempo. Like,
As someone who's doing triphasic training right now, I can attest to this.
literally.
At an eccentric, you'll be
And it's not
humbled.
just the like physical fatigue, your mental fatigue of like all the numbers you have to keep track of the whole time.
Me counting like 12 to 15 reps with a 4-second eccentric. These sets
Brutal.
are also taking a long time. Like,
Yeah, you go to the
you
gym
have
forever.
to be just in a way, you have to just like disassociate from the fact that you are like going to be in the gym for like an hour and a half minimum doing this. But
Yes.
to your point, yes, 100%, because I am in it right now.
Me starting with my physical therapist last week, she like programmed in hack squats for with a 3-1-1-0 tempo.
Jesus.
That 0 tempo is also like awful at the top when you just have to go right back down.
No, actually.
And the hack squat machine's like 125 pounds. I'm like not even loading it for the first set. And I'm like just RPE 6, I'm still dying. Which probably isn't good, but there's no way to not load the machines. I'm just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
So that's progression. Keeping like the minimum, and when I say minimum effective dose, it means we're not going as hard as we have to all the time. You can still elicit growth at, like I said, a 6-7 RPE. With hypertrophy, typically you want to stay within a 6 to 10 RPE range. Going into overload, basically, in order for the body to grow, it has to be stressed. And so sometimes I do get a little irritated when on social media it's like, you have to, like, no stress. I let me be clear. The typical American life, it's everyone is stressed out all the time. It's a lot. And obviously outside stress, please don't be overly stressed. However, you need stress in the gym. Like, stress quite literally is your friend in the gym as long as you can recover from it. So overload is overloading the muscles, doing more than what you were doing before, which is where it does play into progression in order to grow. Because without that, which is why, like you were saying, when you used to train 20 pounds for the same volume over time for years, it's why nothing happens, because your muscles nothing is changing. There's not any new stimulus happening, which is not going to elicit growth. Which, going into the third training principle, is recovery. It's not just rest days. It's not just time between sets. Like, recovery also means deloads. It means getting proper sleep, quality and quantity. There's a growth hormone is what is, like, basically released during deep sleep. So if you're not getting deep sleep, growth hormone, which is anabolic, that's a good thing. It helps with growth. If that's not being released, like, you're not recovering as properly as you could be. But that also goes into food, hydration. There's a ton of different things that go into recovery. One of them, the big one, is food, which is why we don't preach being in a deficit forever, because your body cannot properly recover.
Yeah, especially if somebody has goals of, building muscle mass or building strength or a performance related goal. Like, you should not be in a calorie deficit training for a high rocks or a half
Please no.
marathon. Like, you're setting yourself up for injury, quite literally. If you're doing that, you need fuel, and your body's going to know what to do with it too. Like, your body is, I think we don't give our bodies enough credit for how smart it is and how much it communicates to us. And recoverability is such a huge aspect of that. I talk about it in my client check-ins all the time. I'm like, let's look at recoverability to make sure that everything's looking really good for the week and that you're feeling good, because biofeedback typically is impacted by, I find, like, lack of recovery first, and then that can snowball into other bigger problems long term if that's not addressed.
Yep. And plus, when you're training for those things, your activity level is going up so high. So more than likely, with your NEAT going up and your overall expenditure going up, so does your caloric need. So even if your maintenance is estimated at 2,100 calories, when you're training for a half marathon, it could be a lot more. It could be 2,200, 2,300, 2,400, 2,600. So yeah, recovery, definitely important. Which you brought up, another one is adaptation. Our bodies, like you said, are so smart. So that's like the fourth training principle. This is in no specific order, by the way, but your body's really smart, which is why if you undereat for a long period of time, your body is going to adapt to that amount, which is why you're not hungry, because your body is used to that amount. Vice versa. For me, I've been eating 2,300 calories plus for a while now. When I eat 2,100, I'm fucking hungry. But it goes into training as well. If you're using the same weights over time with the same volume, your body is going to adapt to that, and it's not overloading, which means it's not growing. You're just staying the same. You're not necessarily, like, going backwards, but you're also not going forwards, which I'm assuming is what most people want, is to continue to grow. So that's why introducing in, like, progression and overload are so important. Mm-hmm. We have individualization. So obviously everyone is different and requires different stimulus, which is why, group fitness is, I will say, we demonize group fitness a lot. It's good for some people. For people the busy mom who, like, just needs to be healthy, like, doesn't have physique goals, doesn't have specific training goals, just, like, needs for her sanity to, like, get out of the house and just go disassociate. Perfect. Great. But when you have specific goals and you are trying to reach a certain physique, individualization is important. Like, choosing those training, choosing exercises specific to the client, choosing volume specific to a client. For a client who wants to get stronger, specifically at deadlifts, like you probably don't want to put them in a hypertrophy phase. They probably should be in a strength phase. For the client who wants to gain muscle, they probably should be in a hypertrophy phase. So really taking the client's goals into mind. And that's not always super specific. It could be a really broad goal, but that's where their training can be focused.
Absolutely. Especially if pain is in the mix as well. I just want to add that
Mhm.
too. Like if someone is experiencing pain, or if they're a runner with you and they're experiencing ankle weakness, like, incorporating things that fill that deficit. And I think that's where individualization comes into play too.
Yep.
Um, because at the end of the day, we could all follow the same workout plan. Like you and I could follow the same stuff, but like we also are two totally different people with different pain things that we're going through. And I think that's where our responsibility as a coach comes in as well, to truly individualize it just based on someone's not only lifestyle, but then pain too that they're experiencing.
And remembering those things. Like I know I've had so many clients come to me and they're like, I work out from home, and my old coach would give me the Smith machine, and I told them I work out from home. And like, I don't have a Smith machine. So as a coach, do your due diligence and like take really good notes. Like your clients deserve that. So please don't be the coach who programs in a Smith machine for someone that's at home. But with individualization is specificity. So I kind of like touched on that with individualization, but like the whatever you are doing in their workout should be specific to their goals. If they don't have a goal to grow glutes, like include some glute focused movements, but like your days, you shouldn't just have a full glute focused day. Make it well rounded. Make sure you're paying attention to that, right? Like it should be specific to whatever their training goal is, their physique goal is.
Yeah. I also think that's so outdated of, just the whole idea of like, I think that's very 2015, 2016 of glute days and only training glutes, like
Yes.
the era of the booty guides and all of that stuff. So if
Oh my
you're
gosh.
training clients who also just have maybe not the best or unrealistic expectations or goals that they're setting, it's also a great time to like educate them on why we create a well balanced and rounded training program. And you're not just going to hip thrust 5 days a week and do glute kickbacks for entirety of their life.
Very true. And also like a glute, like if you're just focusing on glutes without focusing on hamstrings and quads, like you're gonna look fucking weird. So
Mhm. Yeah.
do all of it. Be well rounded.
Yep.
And then the seventh training principle is reversibility or variability. So the thing with this is if you don't use it, you lose it. That's not to say that your client has to deadlift every single phase if they want to improve their deadlift. Like it's okay to take a break or to change up what type of deadlift variation you're doing. If someone has been really great at squatting for a long time and they don't do it for 8 weeks, they're not going to be able to go back to what they did in 8 weeks. It's the same thing as like running. I was training for a half marathon. There's no way in hell I could go back to running 8.5 miles tomorrow.
Mhm.
Like without my knee issue. You can't do it. If you use it, you lose it. So your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system actually is one, like I would say it responds a little bit quicker than even like your skeletal muscle. So specifically if your client is like, oh, I used to run track in middle school. Cool, dude, that's doesn't matter now because it's been 10,
Long
20 years.
gone.
We're gonna have to slowly get back into it.
Yeah, like let's not open any yearbooks that are going to trigger you and remind you of your track days. Like we're going to lock those away and start a whole new era. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so true. So I think just like when you're programming, remembering those things like is really, really important. There's obviously elements of program design. I don't want this to just be a super like structured podcast where I'm just giving you all of it, but really to touch on with periodization and ways to progress. There's tons of ways to progress a client. It's not just increase reps or increase the sets this week. You could introduce in, like you were talking about earlier, isometric holds. So tempo variations. We could slow down the eccentric. We could add an isometric hold. One of the more unpopular ways to utilize tempo is like a powerful concentric. A lot of times we always hear slow and controlled, but like we forget that there is also a concentric phase. So when we're looking at that, for instance, with a squat, a slow eccentric would be like dropping into the squat very slowly. The isometric hold would be if you held the squat at the bottom. Absolutely brutal. When you stand up, that is concentric. So we're thinking about that. You can make it explosive. That makes it a little bit more challenging. There's ways to also do, like I've seen in like a 45-degree hip extension, doing a slow concentric as well. Basically, that's like keeping more time, like you're keeping time under tension longer.
Yeah.
So longer time under tension with your glutes, and like a way to also keep like the glutes almost like contracting throughout the whole movement, and not taking like that break between reps. Um, there's a ton of ways to vary tempo. Like you said, you're doing triphasic. I don't know if you wanted to touch on kind of what that looks like a little bit.
Yeah, so triphasic, it's literally 3 phases that you follow, and it's anywhere from, I mean, different durations can happen. I unfortunately, speaking of 12-week blocks, I'm unfortunately doing 4 weeks within each phase, which
Mm-hmm.
is a lot. However,
Fine.
I do want to preface the fact that like I'm coming back from injury. I have not like I have just dealt with a lot of setbacks that I actually really enjoy that I'm going to be able to dial in and feel really strong by the end of it. I'm already feeling stronger, but essentially the first phase is eccentric, where I'm focusing on anywhere from 3 to 5 second eccentrics, depending on which movement I'm doing. I would say 90% of my movements are implemented with the eccentric. I do have some that are just regular reps, especially with just pain considerations. There are some movements I'm not doing in the eccentric. Then I move to isometric, where I am doing the pauses, and I am not looking forward to that. Eccentric sucks, but isometric, you're
Really
stuck in
sucks.
place. At least like I'm moving in an eccentric.
Your thoughts are a lot like going wild when you're just stuck there.
I'm gonna be like, you guys go to my Instagram story. In 2 weeks, I'll be like shaking in my video. I'll just be like sitting, shaking the whole time. Doing
Dying.
bench press, my arms are gonna be like flailing a little bit. It's gonna be a time. But then the last phase is the concentric there, where I'm focusing more on the power and the full movement that I have. And I actually fully expect, like, people think, oh, well, if I'm doing eccentric and weight's less, yes, weight is 100% going to be less in my eccentric phase right now. Like, I usually am benching 95 to 100 pounds. 75 is a challenge. Like, it's brutal. But I fully expect that as I go through the phases, by the time I get to the last phase, I'm likely being able to do more weight, but I'm stronger. I have more control, endurance wise, like muscular wise, like I am feeling more able and capable of doing that. And so it's fun because you're challenging yourself, but it is a phase that if you guys want to try it with clients, or if you're like, I want to just figure out like how my client can progress, I want to do a sense of progressive overload that maybe has a little bit more structure to it, of like, oh, I can do 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and you can explain that to a client. I would do it. I honestly recommend everyone to do a triphasic split at least once. Like, do it once. I personally like them and keeping them in a rotation, but highly recommend, because it especially helps anyone. Like, anyone can do a triphasic and benefit from it if they're going through pain, if they are an athlete who has a specific goal, or if they're any of those, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, you can fit them into the mix there. Probably more stage 2, stage 3, but once you kind of have a good idea of the client, I would 100% trickle that in. But yeah, I like it. Some common complaints you'll hear from your clients is that it takes forever. It
It's
does,
true.
because you're doing 3 to 5 second eccentrics on everything. But the benefit is that by the end of it, I will say, like, physique wise, I'm already feeling stronger. I'm feeling better there. Strength wise, I'm feeling better. Motivation wise, I'm feeling better. You just have like this new sense of motivation towards training when you're able to implement and control some variables, such as obviously load and then time under tension. You have all these different things that you can manipulate with a client. It does get more fun, and you get to really challenge them a little bit more than maybe they're used to when they think of weightlifting and strength training.
Yeah, it definitely makes it like it changes your perspective on it a lot for sure. And there's actually a really good book. It's literally called Triphasic Training,
Mhm.
by Cal Dietz. So I will include that. He was a, I'm not sure if he still is, but a strength coach at the University of Minnesota. And so it was really interesting to hear, like, it is from an athlete's perspective, but like you said, this is for every client. Like, it really is. Like, I would just say not the very beginners who, like, if you threw tempo at them, they'd be like, lost and confused. Like, you don't want
Yeah.
to add confusion. This is for people who have been training and do understand to a sense, but it was a really helpful book. It dove into like a lot of the science and why it's important. And when you start to think about like muscle contractions more so from like it's like your body's a springboard. Your muscles are a springboard, and it's really cool to train that way. So I've loved I think it's fun to program because it really just gives you like more structure too while you're programming. So 10 out of 10 recommend.
Also for the clients who potentially do have those moments of like, well, nothing's changing, all this stuff, like movement wise, honestly, throw in triphasic for a stage 2, stage 3 client, and like things are changing. Like they're going to change 2 to 4 weeks at a time where they're changing the tempo of the movement. And I think that that alone can add that challenge, again, mentally and physically speaking, and keep them quote unquote a little more excited maybe towards training if they're feeling like they're in a little bit of that lull. But I'm really excited for like 8 weeks from now to see like the weight that I can push, but then also the control I'm going to have, the strength I'm going to have, the power I'm going to have. It all works together. So
Yeah,
I'm stoked for it.
it's fun. But yeah,
Nice.
tempo is one of the ways to progress. We obviously have reps, which is like I feel like a pretty obvious one. There's the 2 by 2 rule. So with clients, and this is why I like to actually include rep ranges, and I'll explain to the client like, hey, I'd actually love for you to start a weight where you're on the lower end of the rep range. And typically the rep ranges are about 2 reps, so like 8 to 10, 6 to 8, 10 to 12. And I'll actually use rep ranges a lot in programming, more so than just doing 3 by 10
Yeah.
strictly, because there's more room for growth. So what I'll instruct clients of is with the 2 by 2 rule, if you can do 2 reps over the rep range. So I'll say like if you're at the higher end of the rep range for 2 weeks in a row, then now you need to increase the weight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a good rule of thumb there. Or you can even use it to if you're at the lower end of the rep range for 2 weeks in a row with the same load. Well, now in the next 2 weeks, it's time to go to higher rep range. And so you can kind of almost integrate in without having to build it into your program. Like with the rep ranges, you can now integrate in progression without you having to change the workout. And I always instruct clients like, it's not weak to go at the lower end of the rep range. It just means you're starting at a higher load to where you're not able to go to that higher end yet. And that's not always the goal to go to the higher end. Like more is not always better. Intention is always better.
Yep.
So that's like a good way to
Yeah.
look at it.
I was going to say there's also just movements. I think that clients need to be reminded that like based on the size of literally the muscle group you're training, like you're not going to like lateral raises. You're not going to progress your lateral raises as quickly as you're going to progress a barbell back squat. You know, like you're dealing with two totally different movements, muscle groups, compounds. Like you're looking at so many different aspects of it there that when it comes to progressive overload, just keeping that in mind with clients, that's obviously important too.
Yeah. Which is why you typically can do higher, like a single muscle movement, an accessory movement like a lateral raise isn't as fatiguing, which is why typically you can do a higher volume where like very rarely am I telling someone to do 3 by 12 to 15 of a back squat. Very rarely, like maybe at the top of a training phase. But even then, I don't typically like to do it. There's just higher margin for error. When you're getting fatigued in a back squat and a deadlift, like you're getting fatigued a lot quicker because of how many joints are being utilized. You're pretty much doing a full body lift. So you always have to consider safety. I've seen some people post programs and I'm like, did you really actually just do 12 by 15 of a back squat and then 12 by 15 of a hip thrust and then 12 by 15 at a leg press? Like more volume is not always better. And I like to play on the side of caution. I like to err on the side of caution of like injuries are a real possibility. And I'd rather have somebody training with 6 to 8 really intentional reps on a back squat to where they're actually lifting a load that's challenging to them versus just burning out 12 to 15 reps because they can.
Yeah.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Well, and that's also where assessing form comes in. Like you could
Mhm.
take two people doing 6 to 8 reps and you could have one same weight, same, like let's say these people are literally replicas of each other, like
Yeah.
same strength, same capabilities, everything. And person A is just repping through it, right? Like they're just repping through it. No care of form, no care about intentionality, nothing. They're just going for it. And then there are the clients who are like, gosh, like that was so easy. I could go for like 20 more reps, right? But then you have a client B or person B here who is actually being super intentional. Like they're embracing their core, they're focusing on the movement. They're going to come out of it being like, "Oh my god, 6 day like dang, like 6 was tough, 8 was a push." Like if you look at two different people with it, there is going to be a different feedback loop from them of how that training went and how that set felt.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So yeah, volume, important.
Mhm. So important.
Um, and sets kind of go along with that with reps. Please never program in like 5 sets of 15. Why?
That's the whole
Why?
workout right there.
Why? Yeah. I remember that trend. It was like the 1,000 rep workout
Oh
where you
my
do like
gosh.
10
Yes,
by
squat.
10 of
Yep.
like 10 exercises.
And you had like
For what?
squats,
Yep.
push-ups, like eh,
Mm.
no. Lunges?
Mm.
No.
I
Like
like I just don't.
I think that was trending during COVID. I think that was a COVID trend.
It was actually, yeah, which seems like it was so long ago, but I guess 5 years is a long time.
To be fair, we lost 3 in the mix, so
I'm still
every time
26.
someone's like, "Oh, it's like it's been 5 years." I'm like, "No, it's only been 2 because we lost 3." And I'm just like not
It's true.
those 3 years were 1 to me.
That's why I'm not turning 30 this year. Like
Yeah.
turning
Yeah.
27.
Yep. Exactly.
And I refuse to believe anything different. I really do feel like when you look back at like I'm like looking back at my 20s, I'm like, it was a really boring like 10 years. But also 5 years of my freaking 20s were, well, not five, like two.
Yeah.
Um, but what a time. Anyways, not to get back, not to talk about that.
Yeah. But it's just like junk volume at that point. You're not doing,
Yes,
there's no benefit
you're
to it.
half-assing it. By the time you
Yeah.
get to the last exercise given, it's probably like calf raises or something small like that. But like, what are you really? You're not accomplishing anything. You're gassed. You're also probably not consuming any intra-workout carbs to help yourself with energy. Like you're just
Mhm.
dying for no reason.
Yeah.
When I started like really recognizing that less actually is more, and when you're just super intentional with like every single rep, you don't need a ton of volume. And I guess that's like a side note is the client who's like, this workout was just too easy. I always ask, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Because I have, let's say I put a 7 RP on there. In reality, that's not easy. Like you only being able to do 3 more reps. And I know a lot of people will see 7 RPE as if they know RP, they're how that's too easy. Like
Yeah.
everything should be a 9 to 10. That's not sustainable, especially if you're at the beginning of a phase. And so I always like to ask why. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And if they're not uploading videos, that's immediately my other thing is like, I don't have any form videos from you. I don't even know what level you're training at. Because when someone says a workout is too easy, what I envision is their squat looking like this. And it's not intentional. And so when you go into every single workout, I remember I had like a piece of content that was like, athletes never say that was too easy because no matter what they do, they're intentional with it. Whether they're being intentional about being slow and controlled in their eccentric or being powerful in their concentric, or it doesn't even need to be tempo. It could just be that your every single rep is pristine, like
Yep.
beautiful. And when you stop thinking of things, it's why I stopped calling it like, oh, I'm going to work out. Like I'm going to train. I'm going into the gym with the intention that I am training today. For what? It's just life. Like I'm not training for anything specific, at least right now. But like if you really start to change that mindset, and for coaches, like change your clients' mindset about that. Like even if they don't believe they're training for something, they're training for life. They're training for muscle growth. They're training to reduce risk of injury. Like it's so
Which,
important to
to
consider
be
that.
fair, training for life is the biggest arena you're going to be in. Like that, the most important
Yeah.
arena that somebody is going to be in is literally their life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty dope when you think about it, that we get to have control over aspects of our own health. And
Really.
that's a privilege. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So true. So yeah, if you struggle with that, even including cues in the notes of an exercise. So like I'll do that if a client comes back and says that, I'll include some cues of like, hey, each rep should take you 5 seconds, which doesn't, I mean, I know 5 seconds is quick, but when you're thinking of it, doing a squat for 5 seconds, that's like that's a fuck ton of time.
Yeah.
So really just intentionality. And I will put that in the notes of like a beginning. So like on Everfit, for instance, you can put notes before a client actually starts the workout. They can see all the exercises, and before they press start workout a second time, which if you're listening, you do have to press start workout twice to mark down your stuff. But put that in there. Like go into this workout with intention, or like ask the question and put it in like block letters, caps lock. What is your intention for today's workout? And or today's training session, you could say. Because I think that if clients think something's too easy, especially if you have clients training from home, there's only so much that you can manipulate at home with like little to no equipment, right?
Mhm.
If someone has a full gym, like hell yeah. But the people who have dumbbells and bands, it's like, okay, well, there's only so much we can do, which means now we just have to be super, super intentional with every single rep and being super focused with that. So ways to progress. Tempo, sets, reps. We also have rest time.
Mhm.
There, if you're doing like, let's just use the typical example of 3x8 to 10, resting for 30 seconds and resting for 90 seconds, substantial difference. I'm dying if I'm resting for 30 seconds, but that means that you're going into the exercise fatigued, and you have a little bit of like an incomplete rest, which is great temporarily. If you have a training phase where you're trying to manipulate something, there actually is some research to show that incomplete rest can reduce inflammation. Doesn't mean you should do it all the time though, because it is highly stressful on your body, on your nervous system. So use that with caution. Proceed with caution on that. But rest time can definitely vary. If you're doing strength work, like 3x3, 5x3, whatever it is, if you're doing short, small reps, please rest more than 2 minutes, like 2.5,
Your
3.
your body should need it as well. Like,
If you can go back to lifting for another, like after a minute, not heavy enough for that volume.
no, absolutely not. Yeah. And I think that it's not appreciated enough is rest periods as far as like progressive overload goes. Everyone thinks it's, focusing on weight and increasing reps and increasing all this stuff. It's like, well, also decreasing rest time or even needing to increase rest time is progress. Like
Yeah.
that is literally one thing that you can implement here with clients. I did in my training yesterday, actually, it was like, most of my rest periods were about like 75 to 90 seconds. Like that's kind of the average right now for my training block. But at the end, I had bicep curls and I had only 30-second rest in between these eccentric bicep curls for 10 to 12 reps.
Are your arms
I
okay today?
no, actually, nope. And my period started yesterday, so they're extra not okay because my recovery kind of sucks on the first day of my period. So I didn't feel great. Like, I'm being honest, and I'm using myself as a case study here of like
Yes.
75 to 90 seconds. I felt recovered. I felt ready to go in. That fatigue had kind of like settled a little bit, where I still was able to kind of keep my strength relatively the same kind of across all my sets. But then you go into these bicep curls and you think bicep curls, right? Like, oh, these are a breeze. These are easy, right? Like, okay, I can cruise through this. You add an eccentric and then you truly stick. That is the key here. You have to stick to the rest period.
Right.
You need to stick to 30 seconds. You stick to 30 seconds. Holy hell, will your arms feel like noodles? You will not feel great. It's going to feel a little numbing. You may have to drop weight by the last set. Like that's also something I want to add. There's no shame and no lack of progress in needing to actually drop weight. I think people think too often that you need to keep your weight the same. Like you see it across the board. Oh yeah. And I love your 2x2 rule there where it's like, hey, if weight's staying the same 2 weeks in a row and you're already hitting the higher end of the rep range, like please go increase. But also there's no shame in the fact that like, hey, let's say you're doing pull downs and you decide I'm going to try 75 pounds instead of 65, but you can only maintain that for 1 to 2 sets. And then by the last set, you now need to drop to 65. If you do the math out, you're still doing more than you would have at 65 for 3 sets. So you have to look at it that way too. And I know I keep going in these little, I feel like the little like side person today where I'm just like, I'm just going to add all this extra context and just be on my own little like yap here about it. But to that point, just doing even the bicep curls yesterday for myself, I needed to drop weight by the end. I was doing 15s for 12 reps and I was like, this is painful. I'm not feeling great with the eccentrics here in this low rest period. And I dropped to 12s by the end because I was like, literally cannot do this
Yeah.
set because I'm so fatigued right now.
Yeah.
But that's not lack of progress by me needing to drop weight. It's because you're pushing yourself, and that's
Yeah.
naturally going to happen.
Yeah, and I think when you think about it that way of maybe getting to go up and wait for one set and the other two sets are lower, well, that's like now you're kind of like bare like your entry way into next week. Maybe you do two sets at the higher weight and then you have to drop for one set, and like that's still growth, or maybe 2 weeks down the line. When you're not just looking at overall, like just like looking at rep volume, you're looking at overall volume that includes the weight you're using. You're still improving in some sense, and
Yeah.
whether that be mentally or physically, because I think that's a huge thing too, is like going up. I know some people have asked me like, well, what if I can't complete the volume with the weight that I chose? I'm like, that's okay. Use it, kind of do a modified drop set. Like if you have 12 reps
Yeah.
and you're like, gosh, I really want to try to bicep curl the 15s, but I'm so used to 12 and a half. It's like, start with the 15s. The worst that could happen is you lose form on the seventh rep or the fifth rep, whatever it is, like, and you just have to drop down to 12 and a halves and complete the rest of the reps with intentionality. Like, that's still technically doing more than what you were doing prior. And so celebrating those things, because the gym is a mind fuck. Like it really is, and it's scary to go up in weight, but if that's how you have to do it in really digestible pieces, that's also totally okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's like an ego thing. People just have way too big of an ego sometimes to like not want to have to drop the weight once they increase it. And I see it as like, how freaking cool is it that you got to go play around with some new weight that you may not have touched in either a long time or ever in your life, and prove to yourself that you can do it. And then you get to drop weight and keep that intentionality across.
Yep, exactly. Which is the other way to increase volume or improve, progress over time, is weight, which I feel like is probably the most common and shouldn't always be used. Like in reality, phase to phase, you're probably only increasing upper body by like 2.5 pounds to 5 pounds. Lower body can maybe be a little bit more. Maybe it's like 2.5 to 10 pounds, just depending on if it's both are like a dumbbell, like for instance, you can't really increase by 2.5. But if it's a machine, 2.5 is reasonable. That's actually like kind of a lot for your upper body. And then lower body is anywhere from, I would say, like 5 to 20 pounds. It just depends on, again, the muscle group um and load. And that's not always the case, right? Like you could be stuck at a weight for forever and it's frustrating. And maybe that is a sign that you have to deload, or maybe it's a sign that you need to do a different variation, which is another way to progress, is changing the variation of the exercise. Um, for instance, a deadlift. I am not going to put a beginner on a deadlift all of a sudden. Like, hey, we're going to use the bar today. There's ways to progress it. So I would say before someone even deadlifts, like they should know how to RDL, they should know how to hinge. And starting off with like even just a dumbbell deadlift, like holding one dumbbell, dropping to the ground, focusing on form, standing back up. Very simple, but you have to build the stimulus somehow. Even if we're looking at a squat, for instance, like that's a very, very, very complex exercise. Same with deadlifts, but squat, you could start somebody just squatting to a box and standing back up. They have to build up confidence first. So box squat, stand back up. Then you could go to a TRX, have them hold on to the TRX, squat down, making sure that they're not like completely relying on their arms, but squatting with the TRX, standing back up. Graduate them to a body weight squat, or maybe they're like against a wall and like sliding down the wall with their back on the wall and standing back up. So they have a little bit more support. Go to a body weight. Then over time, you switch to like a loaded box squat with a dumbbell, then a shoulder loaded box squat. Then you graduate them to like body weight, or not body weight, like a dumbbell goblet squat. And then maybe a year down the line of working on their squats, or 6 months down the line, they're onto a Smith machine. And then if they do want to go to barbell squat, awesome. And then once you're on a barbell squat, you can vary things so much. Like if you want them to utilize their quads more, have them elevate their heels. If you want to switch to like a front squat variation, you can do that. You can do pause squats. You could do rack squats or pin squats, where they squat and then they hold the bar like on the pins and stand back up. So taking out a little bit of momentum. Like there's so many ways to vary an exercise. You could add in a rotation to like a split squat. And so that's another way to just add like complexities to the exercise. Um, or even needing to regress to just get back to the basics is a way to progress as well. If you want to gain, that you focus on different ways to manipulate the squat. Now we're going back squat to see how much you've improved in your technique kind of thing. Um, which is a fun way to like progress, is like choosing different variations.
I love playing with different variations of movements, especially if I find myself like as an advanced lifter ever feeling stuck or frustrated or plateaued for like I think plateaus speak volumes to, advanced trainers
Mhm.
sometimes where you're like, what do I need to do to like get through this or progress it? And form videos also go like a really long way. You need to be taking form videos. I joke around where, I'm the girl in the gym with the tripod and everyone's probably like, oh, she's like trying to be like the next Whitney Simmons in her content. I'm like, no, I'm actually sending this to my coach to like
Yep.
assess my form and like do things safely.
Yep.
Of course, yes, I am a coach. And of course, yes, I am going to post content. Thank you very much. But
Yes,
also,
I
I
want to
want
be
to
Whitney
make sure,
Simmons.
of course, I would love to be Whitney Simmons, but anywho, but even as an advanced lifter, like I love cycling through, like I love a trap bar deadlift. Like if I'm ever feeling really frustrated, especially with my pain, I will always sub to a trap bar deadlift because I just love it. I can progress it. I feel safe with it. And then I can always cycle back to a conventional or sumo deadlift, depending with the barbell. There's just so many different variations of things, even as an advanced lifter that you can do. Sorry,
Yep.
Addie is shaking herself. It probably sounded
It's
like
okay.
Santa's reindeer coming through with
Oh, ho, ho,
her
ho.
little ho ho ho, Merry Christmas. But yeah, that's I love variance in movements. And a lot of times when you're programming for clients and you're like, okay, well, what can I change up? All this stuff, like you're keeping a hinge motion in there. You're just gonna sub in a different hinge movement. Like you're going to keep squat patterns in there or quad focused movements in there. Obviously, you're going to do unilateral movements. There's so many different things that you can do that a lot of times you're not changing everything. And also, it's okay to keep movements in there for a
Yeah.
client's training block. You should. You're not going to all of a sudden have this whole new training block every single, again, 5 to 6 weeks. There's going to be variances in it, but I think coaches get, just from what I've seen with coaches I've discussed, they get like way too hung up in needing this whole new revolutionary like program for their client, but the basics work and the movement patterns work. And that's the only way your client is going to get stronger and build functional like strength that transfers to different areas of their life too.
Yeah. It doesn't always have to be super sexy. It can be super simplistic. Um, so yeah, variations are fun. The last one I'll touch on is just frequency. And this would be more so for someone that's like maybe competing in powerlifting where they need to do squat, bench, deadlift multiple times a week in preparation for specifically lifting. It's obviously really fatiguing on the body, but necessary to an extent. Or maybe someone does have a really big goal to grow their glutes, then cool, we can hip thrust twice a week. You know, sounds kind of boring to me, but it is what it is. So those are just a few ways to progress. I know we can get really stuck in like, oh, I can't, like my load's not moving. Like I've been at the same weight for, weeks and I just nothing's happening. It's like, cool. That's like change up the tempo. Let's change up the volume. Like there's so many ways that we can progress without it having to be constantly trying to increase load because at some point you're going to, like I said, hit a wall. Um, so that's a little overview of progression. Again, like every single phase should be um, in some way building off of the last. Uh, but that can be also like reverse linear, it could be linear, it could be block periodization. There's a ton, but without going into all of that, because I know we're getting up there in time, that's actually something that we cover in Beyond the Cert, which we have our next Beyond the Cert cohort starting this month, which is crazy. This episode is launching on June 4th. So if you want to join the waitlist, I know this is crazy. The cohort starts on the 23rd. So by now, actually, I believe we're getting um close to having our what is it called? The waitlist. The Speak, Kelsey, speak. In 5 days, the cohort opens, but you can still join the wait list, is what I was trying to say. But we also host our podcast is today, our masterclass. I'm gonna mark that. Uh, We okay. But we actually just hosted. We are hosting it today. So if you're listening to this before the masterclass happens, feel free to like click the link in the bio and join in. Or um, our early bird is fuck. I just need to fucking. We're marking again. Okay. How do I want to say this? Like just that our masterclass happened. So if you missed out, you can click the link in the bio to
Yeah, get on the email list and
get the
get the
recording.
recording. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But we actually just hosted, or we are hosting later today, a masterclass. So if you're listening to this before the masterclass happens, then click the link in the bio. You can register late. If you click the link in the bio and register, you'll just get the recording for the masterclass as well. But cohort is starting June 23rd. We are so pumped. Registration actually opens on the 9th of June, but it's not too late to still join the wait list if you want to register early and get in on that.
It is the best deal that you guys can get
Yes.
as far as pricing goes before we go to the general public
Yes.
enrollment.
And waitlist does close on June 6th. So
Yep.
if you want to get in, feel free. There's like that 3-day lapse where you're going to miss out on the biggest deal. But it's crazy. Our cohort, we're actually leveling it up way more this time. So last time around, it was 12 weeks. This time around, it's going to be a full 16 weeks, which is so exciting. We get to provide even more value to you guys this time around. You'll get lifetime access to our Beyond the Cert course. If you're interested in learning more about what the cohorts look like, feel free to tap the link in the bio. We have a full breakdown on our website of what the cohort is all about. But we appreciate you listening in. And
And
we'll
we'll see
see
you
you
next time.
on the next one. Bye.
Bye.